Hi, this is Mitchell Sigman with AudioMidi.com. I'm here today with Tom Oberheim with the Tom Oberheim SEM expander module. It's been reissued, rebuilt, better than ever.
Well, the original purpose of the SEM was to produce a small synthesizer that could be played by a digital sequencer that I designed in 1972 or 3, because in those days there weren't any polyphonic synthesizers, and the typical synthesizer person only had one synthesizer. So if they had one of my digital sequencers, they played their synthesizer with the digital sequencer, they didn't have a synthesizer they could play. So I had this idea for an absolute basic module that the digital sequencer could play while the musician played the synthesizer. And so in 1973-74 I developed the SEM, and it looks pretty much just like this, except it didn't have this panel in those early days. And it was a useful addition. You could interface it to a Minimoog 2600 ARP Odyssey and fatten up the monophonic sound. It, of course, was used like originally intended to be played by the digital sequencer. It was a modest seller in the 73-74 time frame, and then in 1975 I decided to put a bunch of them together with a digital keyboard and had the first polyphonic synthesizer that you could buy in a music store, but that's another story.
Tell us about the sound, the SEM sound, as opposed to the Minimoog sound or the ARP sound, which was the dominant analog sound.
The idea behind the SEM, in addition to being a second synthesizer that was small and inexpensive, was to expand the sound of existing synthesizers. So I specifically used what's called a 2-pole filter as opposed to a 4-pole filter, which the Minimoog is famous for, and ARP used, and most other analog synthesizers used. The advantage of that, in addition to having a slightly different sound, was also that it was possible to mechanize the filter or design it so it worked in different, what we call different filter modes. So in addition to the standard low pass, which we're all familiar with, it also could have high pass and band pass and a very nice sound, which is called notch, which is kind of a phasing sound. So the oscillators were pretty much standard, sawtooth and pulse waveforms. The envelopes were pretty much right out of a Minimoog in a sense in terms of the functionality. But the filter was different, had a different sound and different modes, which turned out to be useful for a lot of people.
You made it up until what point? When were the last SEMs made?
Well, of course, the SEM was part of the original Oberheim 4-voice, Oberheim 2-voice, Oberheim 8-voice, and we made those polyphonic synthesizers up through 1979. The history behind that is we were doing a nice business in polyphonic synthesizers all through the latter part of 1975 and 76 and 77, but then a momentous event occurred in early 1978 when the Prophet 5 appeared. By the end of 1978, the sales on the Oberheim polyphonic synthesizer had pretty much gone to nothing, and for good reason, because the Prophet 5 was what everybody wanted in those days. It was programmable, it was polyphonic, it had a great sound, of course.
And we should probably clarify for people not familiar with it that the 4-voice and 8-voice synths let you play 4 or 8 notes of polyphony, but they were made up of individual SEM modules, so they were pretty hulking beasts, right, whereas the Prophet was pretty portable.
Right. Not only did was the SEM itself not programmable, but when you had 4 or 8 voice machines, you had 4 or 8 SEMs that were not programmable. Well, later on they were partly programmable, but it was not a convenient thing, and it was a beast to use. I think probably a lot of people would program one sound, and that's pretty much all they'd use. Prophet 08 or the Prophet 5 came along, and you could store the complete status of the machine in a patch, and you could go on a gig and play any number of different patches. It was a breakthrough for sure. It was an interesting set of events or incidents that happened. I'm in a weekly coffee group with a number of electronic and computer music people in Berkeley, California. One of those is Roger Lynn. Roger's a very close friend, and starting on the late summer, early fall of last year, 2008, Roger started talking to me at this coffee group. He says, "Tom, you need to bring out the original SEM." I said, "Oh, Roger, it's so obsolete. It's not programmable. It's old technology." He says, "No, it's fine. Just bring it out." And I thought, "Oh, I don't know. If I'm going to do a synthesizer, it's got to be brand new and the latest technology, etc., etc." Roger kept encouraging me to do it, but just like the original. And I didn't think too much about it. But then in the fall of 2008, I was invited by the Red Bull Music Academy to do an interview lecture in Barcelona at their annual meeting, and a lot of young DJ producer musicians were there, and basically talking to them, got the encouragement that it might be fun to do this. So that was the inspiration, and that started in earnest in late 2008, and now it's reality.